Hari Om. Hari Om. Hello, my friends. I just had a short circuit in my electrical line. So for a moment, I wasn't sure whether I can start at all, but it's all right now. Advaita. Hmm. Everybody talks about oneness now. Advaita doesn't really mean oneness. Advaita means not two. And actually, it's indicating that the word oneness is also somewhat misleading. Because many people say that when they talk about oneness, that the multiplicity is completely illusion, non-existent. But the multiplicity exists, temporary, changing all the time. Still, it exists. But it's not two, Advaita. Everything is a manifestation of that one essence. Everything is an expression of that one essence. Nothing is separate. That is what Advaita means. It's not two. All is connected, all is an expression, a manifestation of that same essence. There is no contradiction between oneness and multiplicity. There's that one essence expressing in so many ways. The tree is an expression of that. The mountain is an expression of that. Peter is an expression of that. Claudia is an expression of that. But the tree is not the mountain. The mountain is not Peter. Peter is not Claudia. And yet all is that. This is the mystery. All is one, and yet there is multiplicity. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's beautiful. It's creative. It's wonderful. What is causing the problem is simply that we create those barriers. That I identify with one expression and create a barrier around, and then inside it's me, outside it's the others, and that is creating all the problems. That multiplicity is there. It changes all the time. It's momentary. It's continuously in flux, but it's still there. There's nothing wrong. It doesn't create a problem. It's just when I separate myself. And to remind ourselves is Advaita, not two. We are all connected. We are all expressions of the same. There are not two. It doesn't say it's all one. It's not two. Because it's one and many simultaneously. The intellect may say either it's one or it's many, but it cannot be both, but it is both. then what can we do that we are not suffering from that sense of separation? We simply have to remind ourselves all is one, all is connected, all is an expression of the same. I am not separate. If we don't directly experience that, we can pick it up as a working theory and work on it. And more, when one reminds oneself of that, that sense of connection is there. Sometimes more, sometimes less. If we are totally absorbed in our story, then we don't feel much of that. But if we relax and let that story go, then that sense comes back. All is connected. We are not separate. There is no need of struggling the me against the others. There is no need of all those hatred that is created because of that sense of separation. Advaita, it's not two. It's not separate. The tree and the mountain and Peter and Claudia are all one, and yet they are different, but not separate. This is what we have to remember. We are not separate. We are all connected. There is no need of creating all those schemes about personal advantage. There is no need of all those intrigues and everything that is going on amongst the people. There is no need of all that stuff that is happening in the world if we recognize that we are all one, that we are many and at the same time one, that we are essentially the same and yet unique, beautiful expressions of that. That's the job we have to do. Detach from all our old ingrained habits, how we are perceiving ourselves, how we are perceiving the world, how we are continuously creating that separation, me, the others, me, the others, me, the world, and then learn not to do that anymore. This is a magic show. That one essence is magically expressing itself in so many forms, in so many ways. If we don't create that feeling of being separate, of being cut off from that, there can be no hatred. Whom could we hate? Everything is the self, the essence. From the standpoint of the manifestation, there are others, but from what you are, they're not really others, just different expressions of the same self. We are all one. We are not two. Let's always remember when we get up, when we go for our daily work, when we live alone, when we live in families, when we live in groups, we are not separate. Advaita, not two. Somehow or other, that job has to be done. How we are doing it doesn't matter, but somehow or other we have to find a way to remember this and then consequently go about it. The moment that memory is here, reconnect consciously. Let go of all those feelings all those habits that strengthen that sense of separation. We don't have to artificially try to produce love. If we don't create the opposite, love is there naturally. It's that which naturally connects everything. We don't have to learn to love everybody. That love is already there. We just have to learn not to cut it off, not to prevent it from flowing, not to prevent it from manifesting. It's already there. Doesn't have to be produced. We are Advaita. We are not two. All is connected. We cannot repeat it too much to ourselves until we don't produce the opposite anymore. That habit is so strong, and so it takes a bit work to counteract that habit, but it's worth the trouble. It's the one thing that is worth most the effort. All other things, running after enjoyments, running after career, running after riches, is paling in comparison. There's nothing that brings a profound richness like that awareness that we are not separate. Once that awareness is there, then the experience of that starts to unfold effortlessly. Until that awareness is there, an effort is necessary because without that effort, we just keep on and on and on reproducing all this false sense of separation with which all the troubles come, with which all the struggle comes, with which all the hatred comes. In personal life and in the life of nations, and then all these terrible things can happen that are happening right now because of the me and the other, because there is not that awareness of Advaita, not two. All is one, all is connected, even if it appears in so many different forms. It's not something difficult. We just have to consequently go about it. Let's wake up with the intent to remember to connect with that. Let's start the day with the intent not to fall into the old trap and strengthen again with our actions, with our reactions, with our feelings, with our talks, that sense of separation. That is the job. Let's live like this. Let's not miss the chance that is there all the time to connect, to bring the attention back to that sense of connection, to that sense of oneness, to that essence of all there is. Okay, I dropped this subject, but there is a subject that comes close to it. Mariano has asked about, ask me to say a few words about what Ramana said when he described his that experience. Actually, what he describes is that there, when he felt he's dying, when he felt now the body is dead, but I'm still here, and he asked then for the first time, most probably, that question which became so famous, who am I? And he became aware of an aspect that has been there all the time, but he has overlooked it. And so after that, he describes that I was always there. I could be silent and it was there, or I could be with people and talking and it still was there. In one stroke, he made that step. It was not the end of the story, but it was the beginning of a great discovery, of an experience that kept on unfolding effortlessly from there. He sat and sat, but it was not that he did a tremendous effort, it came naturally to him. Now, what does he mean? The I is there. Whether I'm active or not active, whether I'm silent or talking to people, the I is there. It's simply one way of telling that what I have been talking about in the beginning. The essence, that which you are, is always there. And in our language, it has happened that that word, I, is immediately touching that. We have the tendency to immediately cover it up and put a whole story on it, create an image, and create so many attributes. But prior to that, that simple, pure I, which Ramana later oft said the I, is always there. It is that essence that is prior to everything. And he is just in one stroke became aware of it, became aware that it has been there all the time, even if he had not known. And from then on, he remained simply immersed in that and let his experience of that unfold and unfold effortlessly beautiful. We can also live like this. He's indicating, Mariano, he's indicating the same thing we have been talking about time and again. There is that essence, and he calls it the I, which is always there. Somehow or other, when this is not, I mean, Ramana is a very exceptional case. Most of us, we have to try and try again and try again and try again. And sometimes it works a bit better, and then it doesn't work, and then it works a bit better, and then it works very good, and then it doesn't work again. Because we are loaded with so many old patterns, old habits, old vasanas, that we somehow have to deal with it, to cut through it, to come to that pure essence. What Ramana Maharshi did in one stroke, most of us have to work for it. Once that connection is established and conscious, then it continues effortlessly. It's not the end of the story. It's the end of a struggling story, the end of a chapter. And Ramana Maharshi simply ended it in one stroke. And for us, we usually have to work for it and try. And gradually it's getting easier, and eventually the attention sinks so deep into that we don't lose it anymore. And then the experience of that will start to unfold. One can still make efforts, but it's not perceived as effort. Everything becomes the play of that same essence. That is what Ramana means with the I. The I is always there. And as I said later, often he called it the I. To make a difference from what people usually mean when they say I. They don't mean that essence when they say I, but they mean the image they have created and identified with. But even for people who identify with that image, actually, if you say I, you immediately connect consciously with that sense of presence, and everybody knows it. It's not that we can possibly not know it. That sense of presence, that most familiar sense of presence is always there. And when you say I, the attention immediately plunges into that. Simply the habit is so strong to, after that, cover it up that we overlook it. And even a great being like Ramana has overlooked it before, and then suddenly in his 17th life year, suddenly he became aware, and the great exceptional thing about him was that it stayed. It came and stayed, and he never lost it again. Okay, then I'm leaving this also, and I'm asking you, my friends, is there anyone who would like to come in and say something? You're welcome to do so. Nobody wants to talk? Okay. Let's stay with Ramana Maharshi then. After his experience, he stayed for some time in his native place, not far from Madurai, but he was always absorbed. He did go to school. He did do his homework, but he was in between always drifting away from it and just plunging into the depth of his inner experience. And his brother teased him that, you are such a great sannyasi, a great Mahatma, then why are you living this kind of life and go to school? And he thought, yes, he is right. And soon after that, he left and came to Arunachala. And he simply sat and he simply let that experience unfold. He mentioned later, when he was living in Virupaksha cave, in the first editions of his life story, there he mentioned that sometimes when he was walking up to Skandashram and again down to Virupaksha, suddenly something happened and there was again a shift. But after that, that was somehow cut out of his story. And when people don't talk about it, but it was not the result of an effort that he made. He just so naturally was drawn in that it was not an effort for him to sit there. And he sat for hours and hours, often totally unaware of the world around. Actually, he never talked about it, what was going on. He talked about the first period in his life, that when that shift happened, that death experience, and the first period after that, until he came to Tiruvannamalai, and from then on, he didn't really say anything what was going on, because there is not much to say, and yet that doesn't mean nothing is going on. Most of the people have the same notion that I used to have, the same wrong notion that there is something happening in one stroke and that's the end of the story. But it's not the end. It may, like in Ramana's case, in one time be the end of one chapter. It was just the start of a new chapter. Simply he didn't talk about it. He talked after that to people how they can deal with their mind, how they can learn not to get distracted all the time, how they can find ways to bring the attention back to the self, to the essence. But he didn't really talk about how his experience kept on expanding. Sometimes he dropped a little hint that when he was an elderly man and people sometimes were wondering whether he somehow came down from his high state when he was sitting in samadhi all the time as a young lad, whether now that he's sitting on his couch and talking to people, whether he's come down from the high state. But then he said, no, the state is the same. That time I was sitting and keeping quiet, and now I'm sitting here and talking to people. It doesn't change the state. And he gave an indication also sometimes in expressions like, after all, that jnani's power is increasing continuously. So he admitted that it was not that somehow suddenly something has happened and this was then in a package and that was the whole. But there was an expansion that simply continued all the time. We cannot directly use this knowledge, but it's good to be aware of this because there are so many people, they have some kind of opening and then they have the tendency, because of all they heard, to think, okay, that's what it is. This is enlightenment, so I'm enlightened, and have the tendency then to settle down there instead of being grateful for whatever has happened and open and let the experience expand. There is no end to it. There is an end to suffering. When we stop creating all those mental anguish that make us suffer, then suffering is gone. As long as we are appearing in a human form, sometimes it may be very unpleasant. The body sometimes may be painful, but that mental anguish, that is suffering, is need not be there if we don't create it. There is an end to suffering. There is no end to how that inner experience can unfold and unfold. Everybody is always learning, but that learning process can be a playful, joyous journey. It need not be a painful struggle all the time. We have grown up being sure that it is like this most of the time. Learning is a painful struggle, but it need not be like this. We can playfully, joyously learn all the time. And that unfolding process means that there is a ever increasing joyousness simply present. That joyousness that is inherent in existence, in the essence, is manifesting stronger and stronger as the experience keeps on unfolding. Naturally, it doesn't have to be produced. We don't have to run after kicks that we get from something outside. It's simply there. Once last season, somebody said to me in a satsang, "You are talking about suffering. How can you talk about suffering? You seem to be joyous all the time." Right. I can talk about it because I remember the whole mechanism very well. I did it a lot to myself, like everybody is doing. There was not really any reason for suffering. I mean, I grew up in a society where everybody had to eat and had a shelter, had clothes, and yet I felt my life is painful, often feeling sorry for myself, suffering, creating suffering. And eventually I stopped doing so, becoming aware I have been doing that all the time to myself. If we are not creating those mental patterns that make us suffer, then there is no suffering. We are doing that to ourselves. Sure, the way we have been brought up, the world, everything around has contributed, but still, finally, we learn to do that to ourselves, to make us suffer. And then we think that's normal, that's natural, that's being human. It's simply usual. It's neither natural nor normal. It's simply usual. And we can learn not to do that anymore. The best way to learn that is to do that what I have been talking about in the beginning, that what I'm talking about all the time. Learn to bring the attention back to the essence. There is a joyousness that is there, that is always there, that is never absent. It's not that sometimes it comes and sometimes it doesn't come, that it's dependent of the circumstances. And that joyousness is expressing itself and manifesting itself stronger and stronger as the inner experience is unfolding, effortlessly, naturally. We need not suffer. We can stop making ourselves suffer. But for that, we have also to be aware that we avoid the issue most of the time by making everybody else responsible. If something is not going well, if I feel miserable, then we are always ready to say, oh, it's because my upbringing, because of my parents, because of the society I was living in, because the world is like this, the world is like that, because this is happening in my life, this so destiny is happening, making everything else responsible for me, I poor little me feeling miserable. We have to have the courage to see that we are doing that and stop doing that and accept, okay, I'm feeling miserable, but actually I've learned to do that to myself without being aware of it, that I learned it and I need not do that any longer. I can learn to accept the situations as they are and deal with them, pleasant situations and unpleasant situations, deal with them and let them go. And then life just flows and we are not suffering. Sometimes it's pleasant, sometimes it's unpleasant. But that inner joyousness is increasing all the time as the experience of that beingness keeps on getting more powerful, unfolding, growing. Okay, maybe by now somebody would like to come in and say something. Hello, Andreas.
Hello. Um, but it's not helpful. I mean, you said it's not good to blame others, but it's not good to blame oneself neither, right?
We don't have to blame anyone, just to see what is happening.
So you stop looking for the causes to and just accept the situation as it is.
Right, but we can very well see, I'm doing that to myself without dishing out blame because of that. Just see, okay, this is a mechanism that is there and it's good to work on it. Not in order to condemn myself and say, oh, I'm such a bad guy that I'm doing this. We don't have to dish out blame at all. Just see this, the facts as they are, that actually there is that mechanism. Okay, I have picked it up while growing up, but I'm entertaining it and I can learn not to do that anymore.
Yeah, but a lot of times I blame myself because I can't stop that mechanism.
Mm-hmm. Right, but you're blaming yourself doesn't help. You just intensify the intent not to do so anymore instead of uh, scolding yourself and blaming yourself and putting yourself down and I'm useless. Okay, it's still there. The habit has been strong, and even if I have been working on it now and don't really want to do so, it has the tendency to pick me up again and overwhelm me. But when you see, then at that moment you can see and not find excuses. It's because of this and because of that. Okay, that habit is still there, so some more work is needed. And right then and there, intensify again. that intent, I want to be free of it. I can free myself of that. I need not carry on and on and on the rest of my life doing the same thing over and over again.
For me, it feels that I never really get out of it. Sometimes it's a little bit weaker. Sometimes it's sometimes I'm totally involved in it, but it never seems to be really gone, this mechanism. The feeling of the identification with myself. Sometimes it gets subtler, but most of the times it's there.
But everybody experiences those moments. Simply, they come and go, and we are not even noticing it. Also, a person who has never tried to meditate or doesn't have any interest in spirituality, but if they are involved in something so totally, it disappears. There is just the intensity of the moment. If somebody does something they like very much, and maybe it's necessary to put all the attention there because otherwise it could be dangerous. Have you been skiing in your life?
Yes, when I was young.
Yeah. And I just remember, like, when really rushing down the hill, you have to be totally concentrated. And it's pure joy, and there is nobody there. The whole thing disappears. The mechanism disappears. Everybody knows those moments, but then we dismissed it, and then after that we think about it and give explanations why have I been so happy there. But the happiness actually is because all that stuff disappears. We can't hold on to. And so also when you're meditating, sometimes I'm sure it's not there. Then it quickly comes back again, and then you think it never was absent. But everybody is actually dropping out of that time and again. Simply, we are not quite aware that this is happening, and after that, in the memory, we just brush it away.
Is it possible to get aware of it?
Yes, but
When
not,
I try to,
but
yeah, okay, say,
not as the one who tries to get rid of it. It's more that we just have to somehow learn to let go. And then there is not the necessity of assertion, now I'm free of it. There already we creating, creating it again. There is just that natural sense of ease and peace that feels so totally familiar and natural and right.
is it, one psychologist calls it flow, the things you just described. So if you're totally absorbed in something and you're in a flow, then
You can,
then
no, sorry.
it,
Yeah.
okay, go ahead.
Yes, you can call it like this. People, unfortunately, like always, use words differently. And then to be in the flow is now very a popular thing to say. And often it's not really what they mean, like what you said now. Is that to be in the flow? And exactly, that is really to be in the flow of life.
I mean, a little bit different question. How about animals? I mean, they they don't have so complicated um, things in their head, and most animals don't even have a sense of I or like speech and categories, but they're still suffering, right? In a more simple way.
I mean, there are such vast differences of the consciousness of different kinds of animal. If you talk about a little worm that is crawling in the air, in the earth, or a dog, or a dolphin, there is such a, so you cannot give a general answer what is right. I think many, especially insects, they have rather group consciousness than an individual consciousness. And so they are also not suffering in the way like somebody who is identifying himself, herself as an individual. There may be pain in the body and the body wriggles, but there is not that suffering. Now, more sophisticated animals, they do have moods. And when there are moods, there are more pleasant moods and less pleasant moods. A dog can be very not happy about the situation, but still, the dog won't suffer like a human being, because we suffer not simply because an unpleasant situation. After that, we sit in our corner and we brood about it and we think about it and we repeat it, and the dog is not doing that. For a moment, there is a little bit an after effect, and he already lets it go. It's not that the, now, now we have that dog that comes visiting, and whenever he was out and he comes, there is a story between the two males, and they are angry and but then the situation goes and it's gone. It's not that after that the dog sits in his corner and thinks, "Oh, how could he come back again?" And the next time I don't let him come, and already plotting what in a future situation like that. For a moment there is that, but then in a way, even there is an intensity, and there is also a joyousness in a way in it, in that experience of confrontation, of anger, and after that it goes. What makes us suffer is that we are holding on to things. There is an unpleasant situation, there is a reaction, there is something that really nags us, and after that we keep on turning it over and over and over, blaming them and justifying ourselves or doing the opposite. Just emotionally keeping situations alive in a manner they don't deserve, instead of letting the situation go and then see the memory and maybe learn from the situation and go ahead. We keep holding on to it emotionally, trying to keep the situation alive as it cannot be, because it's a memory. It's only right now that we are touching that current, that flow of existence. But then we try to hold on to that and churn it around and identify with the role that we have played, and are not happy about ourselves or are not happy about others. And there, that nagging sensation is there, that thing that we call suffering. And animals are not doing that.
So dogs and cats should be able to meditate much better, right? If they lie down and have a relax, they seem much more at ease. Then it seems much easier for them to be at ease than human beings, but they're not really meditating, right?
Right, not in the same way as in the way that we call it meditation. The difference is that the the higher developed animals, they think, they have thoughts, they have feelings, but it's happening instinctively. It's not that they have really much of a choice about it. Well, the consciousness in the human form is self-reflective. I can be conscious of being conscious. And that has both. It's the possibility to create the total hell out of with ourselves, with our life. Or it's the possibility that the consciousness can transcend and unfold like the consciousness of a dog cannot unfold. He's happily living his life, not meditating, just naturally being in the flow, but not conscious of being in the flow.
So can dogs become enlightened?
Well, there are the stories that sometimes siddhas have been born as animals or simply taken over an animal and lived sometime in an animal form. Or are those stories that Ramana Maharshi gave liberation to a cow and to a dog and to a crow. But what people don't, when they say that the dog got enlightened, what they don't quite recognize is actually he liberated them when they were in the process of getting out of their body. It's not that he liberated a dog and after that, from then on, the dog was sitting in meditation and samadhi in the meditation hall. So he was capable of somehow connecting with that consciousness that leaves that form and somehow liberating them in a way. I don't know what he did. I don't have insight, but it was in the process of getting out of the body. You cannot say that the cow and the dog and the crow got enlightened as cow and dog and crows. It was more like they had a pure connection with Ramana, and somehow that brought about that maybe a lot of struggle that consciousness may have had otherwise has been just washed off. So,
Okay.
but I cannot say that I ever have seen an enlightened animal. But animals are in the flow, natural. They don't create that suffering that humans can suffer. That capacity of consciousness being reflective, that we can be conscious of being conscious. When we use it wrongly, then I'm not conscious of the self, but then I create an image. And that reflection always is directed in that self-image. And then once this is established, it just turns around and round and round and round the whole day long. About me and the others and my story and yesterday and tomorrow and I, me, the others, I, me, mind. But if we learn not to do that, that capacity of being consciously conscious is a great opportunity, and the potential that lies in that is simply staggering. The dog is not creating the suffering that comes along with identifying with that self-image because he doesn't produce that self-image. But he's also not having that opportunity in that dog form to transcend totally that dog experience.
What about the unconscious part of my self-identification, like the lack of self-esteem, for example? That is mostly something which is unconscious and is driving a lot of my experience. And this seems to be very difficult to overcome or let go.
Right, as long as it is unconscious, we cannot really directly do something about it. But in your spiritual practice, more and more of what is unconscious comes to the surface, and then it's not more unconscious. And once it's conscious, we can deal with it and learn to let go. As long as it's stuck somehow on a level unconscious, we cannot directly access it because otherwise it wouldn't be unconscious.
Yes, but some parts never really seem to come to the forefront.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's also not that you have to go and dig in your subconscious and try to figure out every damn little thing that there is. What we can do, what our job is in our conscious state, that we observe, that we are vigilant. And when we see that the tendency is lifting its head and wants to take over, that we learn to deal with it, that we learn to detach from it, that it stops creating troubles, that it stops being destructive. And the more you are doing, the more the subconscious that is connected to that train, to that pattern, that will empty itself. It's not that we have to go and figure out every damn little thing that ever has happened and we put somehow in the subconscious. Some people do that. Some schools do that, try to really go into that and find, remember every detail that has, that in itself is a whole other approach. But it's enough if we deal, if we are alert, if we deal with that which comes to the surface, and if we do that diligently, then sometimes whole packages can drop off without having to go in all the details that has been stuck along with it.
Okay.
Okay, shall we leave it at that?
Yes. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
you're welcome. Hario, Hario, Hario.
How are you?
Is there anybody else who would like to come in, say something? What I just told now to Andreas, it's good also to understand that and to remember that. It's not so that we have to somehow dig in the subconscious, dig, and there is some more dirt there to, to dig out and clean out. It's a jungle. It doesn't have an end if we try to do that. It's such a jungle. But what we can do is in our conscious waking state. Be alert, be vigilant. In our conscious waking state, that we not half of the time react just out of habit without being aware of it. We can make ourselves aware. It's not an unconscious thing that is happening right now. If I'm not drifting off with my attention somewhere, but I'm here and now, then this is conscious. And when it is conscious, when we are aware of what is happening, if there are destructive mechanisms, there we have a chance to work on it. And the best way to work on it is to be even more aware of it, to be alert, to not be overwhelmed and not get into a struggle with it, to accept it is there, to observe what it is doing, to see what it is doing to your experience right now. See how it is manifesting physically, energetically. How we have the tendency for every damn little thing to get all tense, energetically tense, physically tense. And if we are becoming aware of that, then we can consciously start to relax. to let go of them and relax again and relax again and relax again. And in that physical, energetic, conscious relaxation, also those mental, those emotional tensions that we have been holding on to have a chance to simply start to evaporate. We don't have to go and look for troubles in the subconscious. We can be just at ease, at peace, right here, right now, in the timelessness of the present. And those issues that need to be addressed, I can assure you, they come all by themselves. We don't have to go and dig and dig and dig. If somebody wants to do a psychoanalysis, that is fine, if that is part of their way. But it's good also when you are doing a thing like this to remember, okay, in this way, I may become more aware of what is happening, but what matters is that with that awareness, that I learn to deal with the things that I'm unearthing in that analysis here now, in the present, in such a way that whatever is creating troubles, whatever has a destructive tendency, that I can learn to let it go. Whatever prevents us from being natural. And our natural state is to be at ease, at peace, and joyous. It's not something that we have to achieve. It's our natural state. It's our birthright. So even if somebody goes into analyzing and analyzing, be aware that whatever you unearth doing so, deal with it immediately. See what it is doing, what comes to the surface. See what it is doing to your experience right now. See how it is cramping up the body when the emotions come, when the memories come, when the energies play crazy again, and then learn to relax. But we don't have to go for those analyses if we don't want to. Just be here at ease, at peace, and those things that need to be worked on, they come. And so Andreas asked, but what about the unconscious tendencies and the unconscious patterns? If we if we live consciously in the present, then whatever needs to be worked on will come and we can work on it. And then sometimes whole fields may disappear, may just drop off. And then finally, there may be no more destructive tendencies. Some tendencies are there. After all, somehow or other, we have to spend our time. Somehow or other, we have to live. Somehow or other, we have to behave. And people are different, and that's okay that people are different. We don't have to somehow now all tune into one standard version how to behave and what to do and what not to do. But everything that creates suffering, everything that is estranging us from being natural, that we can let go. And if we consciously do that with whatever happens in the consciousness, then we are emptying out the subconscious, even if we don't do any analysis. It simply disappears, and you come back to being what you are, to be natural. I'm asking you again, is there anyone who would like to come in? You're welcome.
Hello, Werner.
Hello, Dial.
So you make everything so clear and so simple, so difficult to find the question. And then I want to ask you a theoretical question. Now the science, the astronomy come to conclusion there should be many planets like Earth around,
Yeah.
like billions, same conditions for life. So we not find it yet, but it should be available somewhere else. What do you think about life on the other planet? It's the same, similar, or it can be absolutely different?
Well, what I'm telling you is just an opinion, and it's not worth more than anyone else's opinion. But of course, I mean, if you look at the universe, if you look just at one galaxy, there are billions of suns. To think that only around Sol, our sun, that on one planet there is conscious life and the whole rest is barren is so, I think it's so completely nuts that one could think like this. Yes, I'm sure there are many, 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 many worlds on the same level with similar conditions, with very different conditions and some totally different life forms. But then there is not simply this level, there are also subtler levels. And on that subtler levels, there are also planets and worlds where beings can be. So whatever you can possibly imagine that could be, I'm sure it is possible. It's teeming, teeming with life.
But when we are die, usually we are attached to this planet, to these people around us. So probably if we are dying, we getting reincarnation on the same earth, isn't it or not?
I think it's certainly not so like the tradition says that we are condemned to go over and over and over and over, get incarnated here. that there is such a strong compulsion. But of course, if there is some strong attachment, then it will pull the consciousness there again. But I'm sure that also people who are on Earth, that the consciousness continues the story in very different realms and very different worlds.
Okay. Thank you. This is very interesting things for me. Very on.
Right. But anyhow, we are for the time being somehow stuck in this world, and we have to deal with the circumstances and make the best out of it. That's actually the best also we can do for what is happening when we go out of this world. But right, I don't believe in this kind of compulsion like many traditions are telling us. I don't believe in punishment, simply in learning. That if one made mistakes, it's not as a punishment we have to come back and relieve the thing and suffer from it. But if that insight is there, if that learning has happened, then that consciousness can move on and doesn't have to go as a punishment to go back and get duly painfully treated for that.
Yes, but the lessons is very real. It's not just like in the school. It's
Right.
practical lessons,
Right.
and you can even die or suffer in these lessons.
Right. The
Right.
lessons are real. And if we learn our lessons, then we'll suffer less and less because we learn more and more the mechanism how we are making ourselves suffer.
Thank you, Werner. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. It reminds me there was a great Mahatma, Swami Ramatirtha. He left his body long ago, actually at a young age, but he was in the beginning of the last century, he was alive. And then I remember having read from him, yeah, people always ask me about other worlds and other realms. And of course they are there. And he was totally aware, as he has been obviously visiting all kinds of worlds. He was totally aware about a lot of things, but he said, no, I'm not going to talk about that because this is food for the mind. And then if people are getting interested in that, then they will come to me and just want to ask about those other worlds instead of asking what is helping them to become more self-aware. So he refused totally to talk about it. But he was a very special Mahatma, Swami Ramatirtha. Of course, it's fascinating for the mind, wondering what kind of other worlds are there, what kind of other life forms are there. Are they good? Are they bad? Are they higher? Are they lower? And then especially on subtler levels, it's fascinating to imagine what could exist. And I'm sure there are infinitudes. There's no way of grasping the multiplicity possible of life and its manifestations. But somehow, it's not for nothing that right now we are appearing in this world, in this human form. And so the best is, okay, you can be open if you start to be aware of other realms, fine, if it comes naturally. But it's better not to spend our time and energy try to open up that or try to travel to that in a subtle bodies. The best is that we use that opportunity here now, that miraculous manifestation of this consciousness and the energy, the life force, and the body that is expressing it, that this miraculous process can happen of perceiving, of thinking, of feeling. It has a fantastic potential. And as long as we are going through this story, half asleep, we are missing that all the time and actually creating a lot of trouble that unnecessarily is painful, unnecessarily makes us suffer. So the best is to be totally focused on that. You can keep your heart open for the infinity of possibilities. It's there, there's no doubt. But it's not for nothing that the consciousness has been focused now on this level, in this human form, because there is a great opportunity here. From moment to moment, if we live if we live in the flow, if we want to use that word, if we really are connected with the essence, then there is an intensity and an expansion which is extraordinary. This human form is full of limitations and is often painful, but it has a tremendous potential, and it's a great opportunity that within short time the consciousness, the experience can unfold enormously. So it makes sense not to try to dig too much into what is there out there. Certainly not good, like many people are doing, to deny that possibility. Possibly it could be there. What kind of arrogance it is to think that on this little dust, speck of dust, this little Earth planet, that's the only place where that life could be. In this vast, enormous universe. It's total arrogance to think like this. So it's not good to somehow brush it away and say, no, 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 there is nothing out there. But it's also, we need not get too over fascinated with it. Just keep that openness. Oh, there is infinity. There is an infinitude of possibilities, of levels, of subtle existence, and more subtle and more subtle. And also in this very material gross existence, I'm sure it's teeming with life. Now, when we are here on this world, somehow the knowledge of that has been shut out, and it's also not for nothing. So we can make the best out of it, make use of it, learn to live in the present. And this is something extremely special that is happening. This human form is a special opportunity. I'm sure similar things may happen in similar forms, but this is certainly something very special that within short time, within a blink of the eye for the universe, this consciousness can unfold tremendously. And every time we consciously bring the attention back to that essence, every time we bring the attention and dive into the essence and dive into the flow of existence, we are doing our level best to just do exactly that, to make use of this miraculous opportunity that we are having here. Good to remember this, for not wasting our time and energy in useless worries, useless ambitions, useless fights, petty little fights amongst people. Sometimes there is a tension, okay, one can deal with it and grow out of it. But the human mind is so full of that stuff, churning around, churning around, churning around, these things, that thing, this. If we think of what is possible, This is so irrelevant. We can learn to put it in proportion by reminding ourselves, hey, here we have an opportunity, a magnificent opportunity. Why should we spend our time? Why should we spend our precious life energy churning around petty little stories and petty little hatreds and petty little rivalries and all this stuff that goes on and on and on in the mind? When we catch ourselves doing so, then step a step back, see what it's doing, and learn to relax and learn to be. That's what we came here for. To learn to be, and in that simple, natural being, the consciousness, the experience, the awareness of the essence of that which is can unfold fantastically, magnificently. I wish you all well. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om.